Hi, my name is James Taylor, and one of the questions I'm asked a lot is about how the creative process works. What is the creative process, and maybe what are the different steps in the creative process? One of the easiest ways to explain the creative process is what we call the 5 stages. Now, there's a bunch of different concepts and different ways you can describe the creative process, but this is probably the one that's the most kind of straightforward. And I should preface this by saying, even though I'm going to be talking to you through as a linear process, in reality it's actually an iterative process. So you'll be going back and forth between these different stages, these 5 stages. So having said that, the first stage in the creative process is this idea of preparation. This is that classic stage where you're absorbing a lot of information. You're thinking about an area that you're wanting to come up with a new idea in, and you're really just trying to absorb as much information as possible. So if you're an author, you're reading the writings by lots of other authors, maybe around this area. If you're a musician and you're thinking about doing an album with a certain kind of style, a certain kind of sound, then you're researching and listening to lots of records by artists to get that kind of level of inspiration. If you're an entrepreneur, you're out there looking at finding really cool businesses, cool ideas other entrepreneurs have kind of created as well. If you're an artist, you're going around galleries, you're looking at books, getting that level of inspiration. This preparation stage is one of the areas where you'll probably devote a lot of your time. In the 5 stages of the creative process, you end up spending most of your time at the start, the first stage, and the 5th stage, the last stage. With all these stages, there tends to be better environments in which to do them. In this first stage, what we tend to find through research is that working in a quieter environment is really best for the research stage. That's perhaps no surprise. It's why we see academics or authors in libraries. It's why we see musicians, headphones on, listening to and getting inspiration from other artists. We then move to the next stage, which is this idea of incubation. And this is where you start to let your kind of subconsciousness do the heavy lifting. I mean, the first stage you've probably been absorbing lots of information. At this second stage of incubation, you kind of want to let it percolate. You want to put a lot of these things to the back of your mind. And you often hear of authors kind of writing maybe a first draft of a manuscript, or even just starting to maybe map out some ideas for a manuscript, and then putting it in the drawer and leaving it for a while, and then coming back to it a couple of weeks later. In the incubation stage, there's no specific time that you need to give the incubation stage. For some people and for some ideas, it's going to be you're going to sleep on it. That's the incubation stage. You're just thinking it, you wake up the next morning, boom, the idea is there. For other people and for other ideas, if it's bigger problems, bigger creative concept innovations that you're kind of coming up with, it could take days or weeks or months to just let that stuff percolate in the background. There are ways of actually accelerating the incubation stage, and I'll talk about those in other videos. So we then move to the 3rd stage, and this is the stage that most of the public think is the creative stage. This is the bit they think this is what creativity is all about, and actually it's, in terms of time, it's the smallest part, and it's called the insight stage. With the insight stage, it's the classic aha moment, it's the eureka moment. You're sitting in the bath and coming up with that great idea. And something that research has shown is if you want to increase the these insights, they happen most often when you're doing some kind of low-level activity. So it could be out walking. It could be in the shower. A number of people I speak to, that's where they come up with their best ideas, is in the shower. I won't bore you with the reasons behind this in terms of what's going on in the brain, but if you want to get those levels of inspirations, just do a little bit of low-level activity. If you're maybe stuck in a rut, you've got a creative block of some sort, then go out, go walking, go out into nature. This is where I talk about different environments having different effects at different stages. So you've had that insight, or what is often more like you've had maybe a couple of insights around an area that you're thinking about. So we need to move to the next stage, and this is a really critical stage. This is the evaluation stage. The evaluation stage is where you kind of put on a different hat and you actually have to be self-critical of those ideas. Because for most creative people, coming up with ideas is usually not a problem. You know, when I speak to entrepreneurs, coming up with new business ideas, they're having 10 a day. That's not the challenge for them. The challenge for them is this next stage, which is evaluating. So a couple of pointers here. The first one is you probably want to get some feedback from outside, i.e., you know, your peer group. It's very you have to be very careful when you're selecting a group from which to get feedback, because it can easily crush your natural creativity if you go to someone with an idea and they just say that will never work. I mean, I come from a part of the world where often when you go to people and say, I've come up with this idea, this concept, the first thing out of their mouths is like, that will never work. I was very fortunate to then go and live in California and work in Silicon Valley, and usually if I came up with an idea, I spoke to my peers, they would say, that's interesting, but what about if you did this or that? And so they give useful feedback, they give valuable criticism to an idea. So these are the kind of people you want to seek out in your area. It could be in your area of expertise, the topic that you're researching, where you wanted to come up with some new innovation.